Welcome back, everybody, to your creativity. We're on a Zoom call. Steve, how are you?
I am doing well. How are
How's it?
you?
I'm doing well. How's the shop?
The shop as well. I mean, relatively. Honestly, like with everything going on, I mean, what is well at these days? So, but we're here. We're eating chocolates. I'm happy.
Got your Dr. Pepper?
Dr. Pepper.
Excellent. But me and Steve are not here just to chat. We've got a guest, a very special guest, in my opinion. He worked with Disney Imagineering for 20 plus years, and he was Evermore for a couple years. Josh Shipley, how are you, Josh?
I'm pretty good. Let me do a quick chief creative officer at Evermore Park.
Where are you today? Because we're on a Zoom call and we see your video. You're in a parking lot?
I am. I'm in a parking lot because right in the little window of time that we have today, I am going to be picking up my daughter from one work location to help her get to a different location. So, I mean, we are squeezing this right into a window, which is why I'm literally sitting in the car.
Josh, is she going to give you a 3-star or 4-star rating? Like
if she doesn't, I don't give her a ride next time.
Do you have bottled water for her? I mean, you should look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that because I mean, every now and then she does need, the transportation. And I thought maybe I should like clock the miles for Uber and Lyft, and then like just give her a discount. Just say, hey, if you need me, I'm cheaper than those services.
You could send her a bill like once a month. Send her a little bill to collect on it.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
So for most of the time, I want to talk Disney. So let's just briefly touch on Evermore. Just briefly, share your experience there.
Well, would your listeners know what Evermore? I mean, I don't know what approach to take. Should I introduce what that is?
We actually interviewed even Corey Clausen like a year or two ago. And I knew Corey from high school, but that gave us a good intro. And I think that was even before they had their opening day. We did the interview and kind of did a walkthrough of the headquarters there.
Oh, really?
But it was, what I liked about it is just the creative side is where you probably came in, which was a big part of what Corey was doing and all the team with all the costumes, all of background material, the furniture and everything.
Yeah, Corey's a main statue, the primary statue of Archangel Michael fighting Satan, that's in the park now. That thing is amazing. Corey is amazing. So for me, as I stated, I came in as the chief creative officer in 2017, came in around July, August, made the official full move to Utah in October, actually, of 2017. And my responsibilities coming in were to start gauging, what the park would become once it was open. The CEO already had in mind what it would look like physically, and had done a lot of, or had tinkered a lot hobby-wise with haunts in the past. And so for his basis, he had his old European village and some experience in doing haunts in his home in years past. And then I came in and established story development, created the entire regime that would become, what the actors are and would become. And there was a lot of unknown territory. What we did know with me coming on board is that it was going to be treated like a living stage, living theatrical experience. And the idea that, my past history coming from Disney is you have a lot of structure. Deeper into my personal life, I have a theater background in my entire life, on stage and backstage. And so the idea that there's a structure to your theatrical presentation, which is the typical form of entertainment at Evermore, we wanted to go into the territory which some others in themed entertainment have been doing, and even in the theater world have been doing, and make it more of a improv nature, experiential type of location. And we opened in the fall of 2018. And immediately, you know, going into the Halloween season that year, testing, trying things, story elements, things that were working, things that weren't, costume things that were working, makeup things that were, you know, things like that. That first Halloween season was a big test. And then we rolled into Christmas and put into some practices the lessons learned with the new hindrance of snow and weather. And then I would say by the time we rolled around to the summer season of 2019 with the Mythos season, we were at our absolute peak with everybody on the creative team and on the acting. And for that summer season, I mean, we really feel as if that is when we were at our high point, stories and questing and character engagements and audience coming in as characters. And it just really was on the uphill climb at that point. And then I made the choice myself to actually leave in September of 2019. And they have a business plan and desire to go off in a direction that isn't necessarily aligned with my profession and my background and what I was bringing to the table. And so instead of me, you know, being there and being a hindrance to the new directions they wanted to try, for me, it was more appropriate to say, okay, my work here is finished and I'm going to go elsewhere now. So that's the Evermore side of the world.
And are
Actually,
you?
oh, sorry, don't.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you know, I don't know if anybody could have seen what was coming up with COVID or anything and
Right.
the impact that would have on Evermore, but even going
Yeah.
to Disney and, you know, any amusement park.
Of course.
How has that changed the way that things have been done in the past for the future, or what do you?
Well, I would say for the industry, absolutely. I mean, quite honestly, I'm still more aligned with the world of Disney, and even, you know, with how Universal treats things. I mean, that's still more of the professional track that I'm aligned with, and so I keep a beat on everything that's been happening there. And it's been a rough week for both of those institutions. I mean, Disney is having some delays with getting some approvals on reopenings in California, as well as, you know, Florida, not just Florida actually, with Universal. They've had some downsizing this week that has affected a lot of people in the industry, and all of that is due because of the pandemic state of the COVID-19 and things like that. And it is unexpected, and everybody's done what they can to try and be reactionary. But this isn't anything that, you know, we're familiar with. Even if you go back to, you know, other historical type of pandemic situations, the circumstances are different in the world. I mean, from a technological standpoint, from the engineering and architecture and our human social, you know, behaviors. I mean, this is so new for every single one of us, and watching how they all are having to be reactionary, and it's not pleasant. I mean, I think everybody's doing a Herculean job at figuring out how to take the next step. But along the way, I mean, we're all being beaten and battered and bruised by figuring that out. And I can just hope that all of us, I mean, literally all of us are learning some lessons along the way, because nobody is necessarily doing it right. We're figuring it out, and we're figuring it out together. And for theme parks, that's really hard, because theme parks are a very social environment. So, you know, this is new.
How do you think that they play a role in society? Like or I mean, is there a value to keep trying in the future, or like what role do you think theme parks have to us as a society?
See, for me, I mean, you're asking me to answer something that I have a biased opinion on, for sure.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
I for one, let me actually say, hey, I'm a gamer, and I don't mind my alone time sitting in front of my PS4 or whatnot, you know, because I find value in that as an entertainment piece. But I'm also that theater guy, like I said, and especially the kind of entertainment that I've introduced over the years is experiential. I think it's very, very, very important for human nature, the human animal, to actually be connected to one another. And digitally, I mean, the way we're doing this right now, I mean, I'm sitting in a car and you're in your shop, and you know, it's like, we're talking, that's amazing. Technology allows us to do it. But I mean, we're not even picking up on normal social cues with one another. I mean, we can try, but we're not in the same room with each other.
It's probably good. I mean, I didn't really shower today, so it's probably okay.
See, okay, then maybe for your benefit, that's the direction we should be headed. No, but
we dodged a bullet.
I mean, but you know, if you even think of the historical nature of theater in itself, I mean, going back, to the dawn of time, and I'm going back to my spaceship Earth type of mentality of Epcot and things like that. But storytelling and the way that we connect as human beings, I still truly believe we need one another. So even the idea of a social distancing, I mean, we joked a little bit about the masks and stuff, but the idea of social distancing is removing the need that we have as human beings for one another. So for the themed entertainment industry, I view it as like a theatrical experience. I mean, we're gonna have to find a way to adjust, realign, normalize, whatever it may be, so that we can function as human beings. Once again, I think it is a core need for us, and it doesn't have to be a Disney theme park, even though that's something that I love and appreciate. I think human beings are in need of each other and need of each other's feedback and entertainment and approvals and disapprovals. And I mean, distancing each other is, I think, is a painful and potentially harmful long-term thing. So yay on theme parks and yay on theater.
And as Steve, as somebody that was going to go down to Disney World in September, it's been keeping me sane for most of the year. So when I found out we weren't going, it crushed me. So yes, they are very important.
Yeah. So that's what happened.
Well, no, I've been revisiting. I mean, you talk about, planning a trip looking forward, and I don't have something necessarily on my calendar to anticipate like that. I wish I did. So what I've been doing to fight that is I've been watching home videos, Disney parks or other amusement parks or zoos or whatever. I've been watching my home videos just so that I can actually feel the little bit of euphoria of that entertainment from the past and looking forward to what, someday we'll get to do again.
Let's touch on that a little bit. Videos of past stuff on Disney Plus. Yeah. They have the Imagineering story.
Yeah.
Did you check that out? Were you involved? Were you involved in any of the footage that was shown?
I absolutely did watch it. Leslie did a phenomenal job on that. She'd been working on that for several years, which did encompass time when I was there, but none of the things that were covered, necessarily had me directly, in view or in camera. But we were always aware of the fact that Leslie, was constantly working on this, and we weren't sure in which format it would eventually get its release. Disney Plus wasn't, even a thing that was being talked about at that time when she started the documentary process. But it was really great to watch. I did, I've talked to many of my colleagues that are still there, and we all tended to share a lot of the same, emotions and opinions and things like that. But for me, it was fun to be able to watch it distanced. And the reason I say that is at that point it became more nostalgic. I was watching things, not thinking about, where I was about to head into work the next day. I was watching it, thinking about, oh yeah, that project was awesome and that was wonderful and fun. For me, the timeline of how it kind of exists is the first 3 episodes are kind of, they encompass what inspired me to want to be an Imagineer. The Walt years and some of the stuff building up to that, and what really drove me towards career choices. And then the last 3 episodes were more in line with the personal experiences. At that point I was watching projects on TV that I had been a part of or saw, in the hallways, and all of the people that were my colleagues and friends and things like that.
What steps do you think you took to actually to become an Imagineer? And is there something that you can do every day or daily to actually keep those creative juices going? Or are there certain steps that you take to do that?
I mean, there are a lot of Imagineering books that now exist that talk about that kind of process, and how to exercise that creativity and keep that kind of Dream Alive, and all of those are good from an instructional standpoint and an inspirational standpoint. Marty Sklar was, involved with a lot of those books and getting them out on shelf, and consulting with the Imagineers in Glendale and all that kind of stuff, and around the world, not just Glendale. But for me personally, I'll kind of go back to, for me, the steps taken were, I much like so many people, I had a love for Disney and theme parks. But the trajectory that I was on, I will say that I mean, really, I believe every Imagineer's story is unique and different. My trajectory was the theatrical background. My family owned and operated a live theater in Southern California. And so that was why I was on stage and backstage, growing up so much, because my family actually owned that location, a theater. And so that became more of my goal of understanding what I now like to refer to as theme park physics. It's actually just theatricality and production. It's, understanding lighting and angles and audience perspective and force perspectives and, music cues and emotional cues and those kind of things. That comes for me personally from a theatrical side. So the trajectory I was on came from that upbringing. And then it was just, sorry, my air conditioning just cranked up if you're hearing that. Then as a kid, I always thought, well, I'll just stay in the family business and I'll run the theater. And that's not what happened. My parents decided to sell the theater in my later teenage years. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So now I have to start thinking about, career work. And I was already enamored with Disney. I mean, I was in Southern California going, frequently as a kid. So I was enamored with that, and thanks to the Disney Channel, I will say I started to get an insight into the fact that there are designers, called Imagineers. I mean, I can't really say the first time I had heard the term thrown out there, but I do believe it was exposure through something on the Disney Channel at some point, and I went, oh, hold on a second. The craft in which I have could probably be geared towards that. But what are the steps? Even to this day, there are no curriculums in schools that are established to go and become an Imagineer. You can follow certain curriculum and specific schools to follow a career in animation, and a lot of people do. If that's where your heart and your passion is, you can set up to go to CalArts or BYU in the animation program, and you can actually put yourself on a track to pursue animation. But there's not a track set up like that for Imagineering, and that's for a deeper, longer conversation someday. But so for me, the path was, well, I'm going to go work in the park. So I did. In '92, I worked at Disney MGM Studios, which is the name at the time, on the Great Movie Ride, and I was a tour guide and eventually a gangster. And that was getting the ops side down. And I mean, I wouldn't say that this is the plan I laid out for myself, but it is how the path led to Imagineering is, getting the ops side down. You start to understand load unloads. You start to understand why cycle times are important. You start to understand guest satisfaction. Why are these people so upset when they walk into the pre-show queue for the Great Movie Ride? Which, I mean, I'm telling you right now, because that is something that would happen. They would walk in and they're like, this says Great Movie Ride. Why are we coming in here and standing in a movie theater? And, those kind of things, you go, oh, okay. So from a design perspective, these people coming in are seeing one thing. They thought it was going to be another thing. We're having to spend a lot of the manual, verbal type of time to explain to them, no, if you just wait in here a little bit longer, there's a ride inside. All of that plays into, what you're starting to think about is like, oh, if I were to do something someday, I probably would think about a different way to stage this, or I would think of a different way. Part of that also, just so you guys know, I mean, that goes back to the theatrical director side. My dad was a director, I directed, and you start to look at, okay, how would I approach this? Not because of necessarily, I don't like how it's done. It's how would I do this because these people need something other than what they're getting. They're confused. They're not getting the right message. They're not getting the right story. So what's the solution here? How do I solve this problem? that was my ops experience. And, I'm just a kid showing up, clocking in, doing my job. I loved that job. But eventually it was, okay, how am I going to get on the track to something more in a professional state? I started interviewing actually with Disney feature animation, because a lot of my theatrical stuff aligned itself with some of the jobs, even just as a PA type stuff at animation. And I had a lot of very good interviews actually with animation, right up to interviewing with, at the time it was Tom Schumacher. He was VP of animation during that time frame. And so I was having these wonderful interviews. And then my brother, who is a scenic artist and had done scenic work for homes and Hollywood stuff, he gives me a call because he had been picked up to do some scenic work at Imagineering, which I thought, oh, awesome. My brother's there. That's pretty cool. But he calls me up and he says, hey, we need some scenic help for Animal Kingdom. Can you come in as soon as tomorrow? And I'm like, well, I like the idea of being able to come into Imagineering. That's cool. I said, but I'm not a scenic artist. He said, no. He goes, think of it like painting sets for Dad backstage. He goes, we'll be having you do some of that basic stuff. I said, oh, if that's what it's like, he made it relatable for me. I'm like, if that's what it's like, I can totally do that. And so I did. I showed up, and my very first day, and this is a lesson for everybody, and this is actually a point I wanted to make. My very first day, I was fireproofing backdrops out in the sun in North Hollywood and loving it. The reason why that's important is because my very first day at Imagineering, I was fireproofing backdrops. I was not developing blue sky concepts for new movies. I was not directing animatronic figures and the animators behind that. I was not, co-creating comic books for Marvel. That's not day one. Day one is fireproofing a backdrop. It's willing to pay your dues and do what you need to. And I mean, day two, I was fireproofing as well. But I mean, point is, you pay your dues, you do what you have to, you learn the processes. And eventually what became my fortuitous change of pace was the fact that the scenic and show production division was just barely on the cusp of trying to figure out digital work. And right now, the world lives in a digital age, but that wasn't a thing. And here I am, a kid who was tinkering around as a hobby with Photoshop 2 at home. And so I'm walking in and I'm seeing them trying to figure out better ways to handle digital graphics and things for Countdown to Extinction / Dinosaur and Club Disney, which was hot and active at the time in production, and all these kind of things. And I said, oh, hey, I use Photoshop. What you're doing makes sense to me. And they're like, well, I don't know what Photoshop is. And I said, oh, so I brought in my copy and installed it just so that I could show, here's some of the tricks you can do with Photoshop. And that opened up a new path for me to follow that I never even imagined in a million years I'd be a part of. And I ended up forming a division of show production called Digital Show Production, which ran and operated for many, many, many years. And I guess that's me saying, that's my unique path. But I hope that anybody listening to this understands that your journey, your path starts way before. For me, it's theater painting sets with my dad. Who knew that would be the conversation that was needed for me to start working on Animal Kingdom at Imagineering. And 21 years later, I'm pitching to Bob Iger, concepts and things like that. You have to, take your creativity and your skill set and hone it, and then follow it and pursue it. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm doing like all the talking here, but
that's good, because I like listening.
Okay, well, one of the things I like to tell students a lot is the importance of networking. Understand that if you're going into themed entertainment design, and it doesn't have to be Imagineering, it can be all kinds of facets. Networking is important. If you want to use the Hollywood term, it's who you know. And I don't mean that in a dishonest or schmarmy kind of way. I mean, get to know people and be sincere about that. Actually have conversations, go to conventions or to book signings, If you're genuinely interested, take the time to pursue it, and then take what you're great at or what you think you love and could be great at, and magnify it and become great at that even further. Do we need to help somebody here?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No. All right. And you need to go, don't you, Josh? It's about time.
As I say, I'm just at this point just waiting for my daughter. She'll be the cue for us to have to wrap up, unless this is a good point for you to.
Well, we have bonus questions, but if they're tight, we can maybe have you back another time.
Yeah,
I was just thinking as you're talking, the great movie ride and digital. What's in that space now is the Mickey and Minnie Railroad thing.
Of course, yeah, right.
The walls are all digital. Have you been
very much relying on? I have not been on it, but I am aware of the project and my colleagues who had worked on that, and the technology that's used. And I'm anxious to be able to go on it at some point. I don't know if I'll get on it there or at Disneyland first. It's probably in Florida, I'm guessing.
Gosh, I wanted to add on. Okay, it sounded like one huge attribute that you have is you were always able to adapt, and so
yes.
Like you didn't have you had a set idea of what you thought the job would be, but you were willing to change and to adapt. Do you think that's one thing that's very important for that?
Yes, I would say. I mean, that's important for anybody in any regards, but especially in something that is creative. Doesn't have to be Imagineering. I would say anything that is creative, be willing to adapt. And although it is a scripting term and it is a dark term, be willing to kill your babies, meaning when you feel near and dear to something in your creative process, be willing to let it go, especially if you think, hey, but
Unfreeze. Josh.
But that was a good point. Can you still hear me, Dylan?
I can still hear you, Steve. Josh.
We may have lost Josh.
Well, we'll sit here for a minute and see if it comes back.
Sorry, sir. Well, so I was going to add, Dylan, about adapting, and even this is probably a good thing of being able to adapt always.
Always. Yeah, always adapting to the situation. And, you there at the shop, you are doing, takeout orders, so you're still able to make money and get people the chocolate that they want.
What's funny is I don't think any of my days ever go as planned, and that I bet that was the same for Josh or anybody. No day goes the same. It's always, if you get so set on expectations of what the days should be, you're going to be disappointed all the time because they never go as planned. And just be willing to go with the flow. Dylan, ask me a bonus question.
Okay, Steve, what does creativity mean to you?
I'm glad you asked that question. Actually, I think that's life, man. I think being creative and trying to do things, that's totally life.
Making everything work, very creative.
What about you?
To me, well, as a graphic designer, I'm solving problems, and I have to do that creatively. Do the things I love, but do the things I need to do also. Finding that balance. That's my short answer without really thinking too much about it.
So if somebody were to make a movie of your life, who would play you?
Sean Astin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you like Sean Astin?
Oh, Goonies, of course. And then when he was on Stranger Things, the character reminded me of myself. And then, who doesn't like Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings?
Should I fess up that I've never watched Stranger Things yet?
Oh, Josh is back. Josh, welcome back.
Hey, sorry. You know what? My phone actually overheated. I thought I'd be the one that overheated.
Yeah, you like froze up mid-sentence.
Josh, you led us into a great bridge of adapting, though.
Okay, let's wrap up that thought. I don't know where you lost me. Let's wrap up that thought, and then I'll have to go until our next time. But I was just saying that, you know, in any creative role whatsoever, you know, being willing to adapt, being willing to let go of things that you think are so important. You know, you might think that, you know, just because mom said you were number one or your teacher said you were number one, that your work also must think you are number one. And use a little bit of humility. Again, any creative job, and be willing to learn. My mentor is a Disney legend, and I still refer to him as my mentor. And several years ago, he said, "Stop calling me your mentor. You are ready to mentor people." And I said, "No, you will be my mentor forever, because I have things to learn from you." And be willing to do that. And maybe that sounds like a no-brainer, but I've worked alongside young talent before that wasn't willing to listen. And I don't mean to myself, I mean to Disney legends, you know, who want to say, you know what, I've already got what it takes. I don't need your input. Don't be like that, you know. If you have somebody who's gone through the trenches, you know, be willing to pick up and learn those things from them. And then, as you put it, adapt. A good example of that, if it's okay for us to wrap up on this, is the last project I was a part of that I actually saw through to opening before leaving Imagineering was Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout for Disney California Adventure. And there's something that you have to adapt to right there. I mean, you've got Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, which is adored by many, myself included. And then all of a sudden, hey, we're going to be changing this to be Guardians of the Galaxy. We knew, you know, working with Joe Rohde, we knew that the moment this was going to be announced, it was going to be controversial. But we also knew that what we had in store was going to be wonderful and fun and superior. And to be quite honest with you guys, in my personal opinion, the superior Tower of Terror is in Florida. From a ride system standpoint and storytelling and all of that. So that one wasn't being affected by this, and the changes we were going to make, you know, we were going to make to the one in California. And, you know, I was even one who, in a meeting with the Disneyland marketing team, before the announcements were made, I said, is Twilight Zone Tower of Terror lacking in popularity? And I believe what they told me was, no, it's the third most popular attraction in the park. And for me, I mean, you know, I'm scratching my head thinking, hold on, why would we take something that is that popular? You know, and to your point about adaptability, or to what I was saying before, you caught me say before it cut off, was, you know, being willing to kill your babies type of scenario. It's okay, just because this is what I absolutely love, doesn't mean that somebody else at the table, even on the corporate level, and, you know, goes all the way to the top, doesn't mean that what they're saying isn't right also. And it's okay that it's different than what you're feeling. And I could, at that point, quite honestly, I could choose one of two things. I could actually choose to fall on my sword and say, no, Twilight Zone Tower of Terror forever. Or I could be the Marvel guy, which I was one of those at work who was a big advocate for Marvel. And I could say, okay, let's make this the absolute best thing that we possibly can. And I'm happy with what the attraction is. I mean, I was only one person on a nice big creative team, but you know, not falling on my sword over Tower of Terror, I think allowed for a new flavor of something that's really fun and awesome for Disney California Adventure. And like I said, if you want Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, you can still go on a pretty rad version in Florida, which I have and love to every time I'm there.
If people want to follow you, how can they do it?
For the most part, on any of the social media networks, Shipley Land, like Disneyland, ShipleyLand. you'll find me out there.
Well, thank you, Josh. We appreciate your time squeezing us in, literally. And well, we'd love to have you back on again to expand on what we've touched on.
Yeah, hey, if there's a desire, just let me know and we'll schedule something.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
Josh.
thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Bye. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Dylan, it's been real.
It's been fun.
Well, do you know, I loved his message about adapting and, you know, not that every idea can be good and, you know, not to fall on the sword over certain things. Maybe be open to change.
Exactly. And it's something everybody has to do right now. Since everything's changing, we don't know what's next. Are things going to get better, worse? You know, we've got to do our best to keep up. And
I think our best is yet to come, Dylan.
I agree. But it's still a big unknown time right now. And it's scary, but also interesting.
Well, go kick ass.
Always.
I'll look for Sean Austin to play you.
Okay, sounds good. I think you do it. Who would you want to play you? I think we've asked, somebody's asked you this in a past interview.
I have no clue. You know, I love somebody like Warwick Davis. I love his sarcasm and his style of comedy. But,
yeah.
You know, I don't know who I would.
He would be a good candidate, though, I think, since he shares a lot of your sensibilities.
Like, I don't know if they have to be little either. So who knows?
No, they don't have to. Because that's not who you are.
I'm going to go eat chocolate.
Okay, I'm going to go be a parent or something.
Grown up sucks.
Yeah. All right,
Dylan,
Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks as always, Steve. I'll see you next time.
All right. Cheerio.
Bye. Cheerio.